Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's the Cut to the Chase Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chase Yantz. Alongside me, my good friend in studio, Justin Lacey. Man, we've been doing this whole thing for the playoffs. Justin, what's going on with you, man? You back in the cut.
Yes, sir. Man, Championship Sunday was, I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
Not so nice for Detroit fans because we were definitely we were very supportive of them as Bengals fans as they were going through their journey trying to get to the Super Bowl. But man, they were living with house money at this point. So I'm still happy for them. They got a bright future ahead of them. Dan Campbell got those guys flowing in the right direction. But man, I'm doing good, bro. How about you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Good to hear you doing well and just trying to push through on a Tuesday in late January, a day where the Bengals made Super Bowl 2 years ago today. But hey, I mean, in
Yes.
the time the
Yes.
time we recorded, man. But shoot, it was a hell of a day to say the least. But we'll have some more talk on the stuff like that on the Run Through the Jungle Network and everything. Go check them out if you are watching it at this point. Like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're trying to do great things over here, especially with the off-season content and everything. Keeping it going, and we appreciate you guys' support. Jumping in real quick in this 49ers-Lions game, it's just unfortunate, man. I watched the game with a Lions fan, my brother. It felt like a mirage in the first half where it was just like, oh my goodness, they are literally destroying the Niners. They are having their way with it up and down the field. And then the second half comes and the Niners start to pick things up. And the Niners started picking things up, but it was really the Lions like having their own collapse and stuff. And that fourth down that they went for it on just kind of destroyed the entire mojo here. But Justin, in the X's and O's aspect and everything, what did you see in this game?
Detroit doesn't have anything to hang their heads down low on. They had one hell of a season. I didn't even think they were going to win this game personally because I did pick the 49ers to win when we were doing our preview show about it on Running Through the Jungle. And I didn't like that I had to pick against the Lions because of what they were doing so far this year. But this was, to me, more about Brock Purdy. I felt like that, yes, even though he had the lucky passes and lucky breaks that were connected his way, we'll go into that a little bit more in detail. But I just felt like that Brock Purdy was almost shedding this label of being called a game manager just because he was the last pick in the draft. He did some things that I felt like that I haven't seen him do all season long, and it really kind of pirouetted off of the NFC divisional round against Green Bay when he was in an uncomfortable spot, being down in that game and having to come back and win that game. Even though I said that was more Christian McCaffrey, this one was more Brock Purdy. Okay, we can talk about, like I said, we can talk a lot about the lucky ricochet catch off of the helmet that Brandon Ayuk made. That was great. It was funny. But you can't say enough about the scramble plays that he made. And he made some really big boy NFL elite throws that it felt like that, man, he's serious about winning this game. It almost felt like our very own Joe Burrow when he came back in the AFC Championship game, as you already mentioned, 2 years ago today, and throw this team to a tie game to then send it to overtime. That's what I felt with Brock Purdy, too. Also, simultaneously, yes, the Lions made some bad decisions going down the stretch with going for it on fourth down when you're in field goal range and third down and stuff like that, and the two drop balls of Josh Reynolds. I understand that. But I also know that Detroit's identity was being aggressive and playing
Yep.
aggressive all season long. To the
Yep.
point, I'm not really mad at that. If you're a Detroit fan, I know you're hanging your hat low on it. I know you're probably feeling some pain. But at the end of the day, you've had a really bright year. You really did. In the spot, like I said, I didn't think that this was going to be them right here in this spot this year. But when they were gifted another home game in the NFC divisional round by virtue of the Cowboys losing, I already knew that this was going to be set up for them inevitably to make it to this spot now at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So again, nothing that Detroit needs to hang their hats down low. And I love how Dan Campbell kept it kind of real in the press conference about, look, we may not be here again. We got to face that reality because I
Yep.
think that a lot of times when people get into these spots and they lose the AFC or NFC championship game, they think it's so easy to get back in that same spot over and over again. It's not. And the
Grind.
reality is with Detroit is that while they have a bright future ahead of them, coming back to this spot may be a little bit more difficult because of who, let's keep it real. Let's who they got at quarterback. We like Jared Goff, and we think that he's been a fine player. He's rebounded from being disrespected and disregarded in with the Rams, and then he's found a new home here with Detroit. But the NFC may get tougher next year, and we cannot guarantee, even in his own division, we cannot guarantee him if that's what's going to be the outcome of them repeating as division champs with which you now have Green Bay Packers coming up. But overall, I thought that this game for me was more so about Brock Purdy and what he was able to evolve himself into than more so than about the Lions collapsing down the stretch. Because again, the Lions, they had their moments and they had their chances too. But Brock Purdy was kind of wanting it more. And you can see it when you watched it on
Yeah.
film.
Yeah, and that was a big thing for I'll give the Detroit half of things in my perspective real quick. Yeah, I mean they should not hang their hats at all on this season because it's been a heck of a ride. The fact that you win the division for the first time in over 30 years, you host a playoff game in Ford Field, you beat the guy who left to go win a Super Bowl somewhere else, with the guy that he replaced. You won 2 home playoff games. You lose a tough one there in San Francisco. The thing is, though, I think the worst thing about it is the fact that they had that big of a lead in this game, and it was like, yeah, the Super Bowl was only 30 minutes away, and if they would have made the Super Bowl, they had a pretty good shot at winning it, I think. But we'll talk about the other half of that in a minute. But yeah, when you're talking about identity, though, like. I even said this, on Sunday night out to my family. I was like, yeah, this is the identity of Dan Campbell and the Lions. They're going to, they got here doing this when they're going forward and being aggressive. They're going to go out like this as well. They should have taken the 3 probably, but again, that's the identity of the Detroit Lions. They're going for it all. But on the Niners side of things, man, when plays needed to be made down the stretch, they made plays. Brock Purdy was really good. They put a graphic up of Brock Purdy and Joe Burrow in their second seasons when they both made the Super Bowl and everything. A lot of people are trying, and I'm not going to bring the Bengals notion into it. I won't. That will be for another episode. But Brock Purdy played really well. And, again, his scrambling ability is something that has been really underrated. We even saw it in the Bengals game week 8 as us being the Cincinnati fans. He can get out and run. He can do everything. I know he's they label him a game manager and stuff like that, but the hate that he gets is unprecedented. I don't know why he gets any of that hate. He is definitely an upper half of the league quarterback and is trying to climb himself up into the top 10 if he wins Super Bowl. I mean, again, you can say what you want about the weapons, all that stuff, but I mean, winning Super Bowls is, what you're judged off of as a quarterback. So that's a big thing there. Ayuk stepped up. Deebo Samuel did his thing. The defense locked up toward the end. It was just an all-around good win for the Niners, and they've gotten back there 3 years in a row. I mean, third time's a charm in reality. And, only, and the thing is, they've gone 4 out of the last 5 years, and the 1 year they didn't go out of the last 5 was 2020, and they were all injured. So,
right.
A lot has changed in that time frame, but a lot has also stayed the same. But, if there's anyone that has the most pressure on them right now in the National Football League, it's probably the Niners when it comes to their expectation as in the preseason and stuff. We're trying to get far and make Super Bowl. But Brock Purdy delivered. He hasn't lost a playoff game that he's played fully. So he is up there in the conversation. When you're talking about, first few playoff starts and everything, he's played really well. So you got to give the credit where credit is due. And he's been balling this season. So good to see for Brock Purdy, doing his thing. What did you have something else to say?
And also, I got to give hats off to the front office for the 49ers too.
John Lynch,
Again, as I already mentioned
John
about
Lynch.
John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I know he's the coach, but John Lynch, I got to give the front office their flowers because, as I already mentioned a little bit when talking about Detroit and Dan Campbell and his presser about how hard it is to get in this spot, 3 years in a row. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep.
4 out of the last 5 years, I should say, because I'm going to count 2019, 21, 22, and now 2023.
Yep.
All right. I understand how difficult it is to get in this spot, but yet instead of going through the makeshift mode of just feel like that all roster people aging off the roster and they have to keep redrafting and redeveloping. No, they keep reloading that gun and keep shooting it and aiming at the stars when it seems fit. They understand the opportunity that they keep having at hand because the NFC West, while great as it was during the last 4 out of 5 years, it's also been kind of in a weak spot the last 2 seasons. If you want to be realistic, the Cardinals fell off after they've tried to go all in 2021 with all their pieces. The LA Rams did go all in in 2021 and got their ring out of it. And also the Seattle Seahawks, you're not really sure if you're going to keep up with this Geno Smith project down the road. So if you're the
Yep.
49ers, you're still that team to beat. You still got the best weapons back and forth on whether if it's offense or defense. And John Lynch, they just kept being aggressive. They went and traded for Chase Young. They signed Javon Hargrave. They got a lot of pieces. Even when it felt like that, they already had enough that it was needed be. But it also shows you just because you got names on the roster, that doesn't mean they always produce big numbers. Because I'll tell you one thing, Chase Young didn't really play a good game on the NFC Championship game, bro. He didn't. Nick Bosa, it felt like that he was single. It's like Trey Hendrickson with the Bengals. It
Yep.
felt like that it was either him or nobody when it comes to
Yeah.
rushing the passer. It really did felt like that. But you got the guys on the back end that was making up for it, and Jared
In the
Goff, he had
middle.
to make some laser throws just to
Yeah.
even get the first down, converting on 3rd and 12. And that was nothing too with Detroit. They were still doing that in the second half, even when the plays that they had missed opportunities on, they were still
Yep.
converting on 3rd and longs and stuff for first
100%.
downs, long continuing drives and stuff too. It felt like that. I was with you, bro. Like I thought this game was over. But credit to the front office of the 49ers for staying aggressive and continue to be in the aggressive front office that they always are, and realizing that you still got to continue to strike when the iron is hot, and you can't let, salary cap situations. You can do gymnastics behind the salary cap just to get
Yeah.
you through it. But I just had to, and they do deserve a Super Bowl at some point. Might as well be this year,
Yeah. I
and
think.
they really do deserve it for
I
all the
think.
hard work that they've put in.
Yeah, I think we both agree on that, and I think a lot of people around the world agree with that. We'll talk about Super Bowl matchup, a little bit, and we'll talk about it on a couple other episodes. But yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs are back in Super Bowl. Talking about 4 times in 5 years, they are in the big game for 4 times in 5 years. They have been extremely dominant, to say the least. And in this 5-year time span, again, we are also a Bengals show. The only person to stop him from that is Joe Burrow. But again, we will have a conversation on that later on. To say than this one, the Chiefs ended up beating the Ravens 17-10. This was a game that featured what could have been at the start of it an offensive shootout. Things were looking very good for both offenses as things progressed, but you get to a certain point, it became a defensive heavyweight bout, and the Chiefs ended up on top and really controlled this game. But there were many opportunities for the Baltimore Ravens to win this one, but just did not take advantage of any of them. But Justin, your initial thoughts, your reaction from this game, and then we will talk about what there is to come from both teams that lost Sunday.
Man, you know what? I never should have picked the Ravens to win. I should have went with my heart, and I should have went with my gut, because we predicted and gave our predictions of the show, and we all kind of collectively picked the Ravens. But I feel like the reason why you and I more specifically picked Baltimore to win this game was because we felt like that it was all set up for them to go ahead and take it and then run with it and then win the Super Bowl. This really being Lamar Jackson's only true year before they probably have to reload and do it again at some point down the road and kick the can down the road. We feel like that this was the real opportunity that the Ravens have right then and there. And we also didn't want to come on here and sounding like Ravens haters because we're Bengals
Yeah.
fans.
Hey,
Because
and
let's just be real. Go ahead.
I'll mention this. If you guys watched our Browns Texans preview, pretty much the same thing, but
It was the exact same
it was
thing.
the
Like we
exact
did not
same thing,
want to
heightened
pick the
stakes.
Browns in that game, but we tried to be logical and think like, all right, think with our football brains for a second.
Hey, we'll admit when
respect
we're
what they've
wrong.
done.
Yeah, we'll admit when we're wrong. So, hey, unlike other shows, but go for it, Justin.
Right. But in our preview show when we did it on Run Through the Jungle, I even said I do not want to bet against Patrick Mahomes, man. I just don't. Even though my head was telling me to pick the Ravens, and I ended up doing that, I knew with the pit of my gut and in my heart that I should have went with the Chiefs. And the reason is because I actually did like the matchup that Patrick Mahomes had against the Ravens defense. I actually did like the matchup that the Chiefs defense, who I knew was going to get overlooked, and it felt like throughout all the talk throughout the whole entire week was about the Ravens defense. Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP and all this and that. And I had to listen to Richard Sherman's podcast to get this little nugget. Did y'all know that Lamar Jackson In 10 games, he threw either a touchdown pass or less in 10 games in the NFL season. Out of 10 out of the 18 games he's
Wow.
played.
Wow.
And that's his MVP. Now,
Hmm.
again, this is not factoring his rushing touchdowns or
Yeah,
anything like
but
that,
it's a fact,
but
though. It's
it's
a
still a
factual
fact.
stat. Yeah.
But you take his statistics that he did in any other season when his defense was not top one in the NFL, that's not an MVP caliber season. And if we're going to be honest, the only reason why we're clamoring for Lamar Jackson to get the MVP was three things. Number one, everybody else in the AFC got hurt, mainly Joe Burrow. Okay. Again, I know we're not talking about this because it's a Bengals podcast, but let's just call it a spade a spade. Joe Burrow doesn't get hurt, specifically in that game in the Ravens where he did get hurt. Joe Burrow was on a tear, and he probably was going to steal the MVP at that point. But him getting hurt allowed him to continue to stay in contention. And nobody really fought for contention for a while until he played the 49ers and then the freaking Dolphins. And that's where he went against both Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey and knocked them
Yep.
both off. And then it was like, okay, well, he closed the door on it now.
Yep.
That's why we're giving him the nod of officially going to get the MVP award. But besides that, man, it doesn't feel like that it was a truly earned award. It was like, well, whoever looked the best out of a down season, that's what it was. And also, the Ravens defense has not been getting enough credit for carrying majority of Baltimore's game. They were just the best team, the best roster, but it felt like the Eagles of last year to where you were just your prototypical best record in the NFL, but really no true storyline behind you other than the Lamar Jackson and the comments that was made about him switching positions when he got drafted. And it's starting to get kind of outdated to me. But what
Oh,
was
very.
always going to get overlooked was that everybody talked about the Baltimore Ravens' number one scoring defense, but yet the Chiefs had the number two scoring defense. And I bet you a lot of people didn't even know that. And
No.
they ended up showing that they were the better team, that they were more prepared.
Yep.
Baltimore tried this physical bully ball nature. And one thing that I am getting kind of tired, honestly, this game gave me a lot of respect for Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs because they really had to get it out the mud this year. They wasn't good all season long, but
Yep.
they turned it up when playoff time hit. And I just felt like that we just kept disrespecting them and writing them off, but it was for good reasons. Like they didn't look
Yeah.
good.
Let me add a couple of things real quick. All right. I
Sure.
did not need to cut you, but we're gonna
No, go ahead.
really dig deep into this. This is kind of like an appetizer with all this stuff. Then we're gonna start really cooking. All right. So you guys can keep watching of this. But a big thing was, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I said something about Spags cooking up some great defensive game plan. I thought he did a really good job with that. And the players came to play for KC. But another thing with Todd Monken and them, they just abandoned the run, which is incredible, which is absolutely incredible. And I know I don't, want to relate to national media all the time and agree with them, because there's some things that they say that are correct. There's some things that, it's controversial stuff. But it almost felt like Lamar Jackson was having wanted to drop back and throw to prove haters wrong. I'm not saying that's exactly what it was. That could be part of it being, Todd Monken just, I don't know what the heck he was doing, but the Ravens' bread and butter was running the football and playing smash mouth defense. And they played pretty good defense after the first couple drives, but they didn't run the football. Like
Lamar did exactly what they needed to do.
Exactly. Yeah. 17 points, and Lamar Jackson was their leading rusher with eight carries, but they have Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, guys you can run the behind the offensive line. It was really questionable with that entire thing. But yeah, man, I mean, the Chiefs turned it on when they needed to, the Ravens, this whole thing. But, this is what leads to the next question, though. So you're looking at the Lions blowing a 17-point lead on the road in the NFC Championship game, blowing their opportunity to go to their first Super Bowl. That's really bad. But then you also make a case for the Baltimore Ravens being like, this is the not only real shot, but we don't know what tomorrow is going to hold. We don't know what the future is going to hold. But if you're looking at right now, this was the Ravens' best opportunity to go to a Super Bowl with the entire down year of guys getting hurt and not playing up to their normal par standards and everything, or above par standards. The Ravens had the AFC Championship game in their house, and they got, I know the scoreboard was only 17-10, but they got dog walked. And, Lamar Jackson, a lot of pressure. We talked about if the Ravens lose this game, the crazy comes to life. It has come to life. Lamar Jackson, is he really not as good as what he thinks he is? Justin, what are your thoughts?
He's still as good as what he thinks. He still is a top
He's a
three quarterback in my
very good
opinion.
quarter. Yes,
Number
yes.
three,
I'm
personally
not
for
gonna
me, obviously.
overreact or anything. We're not
Yeah,
gonna
nah,
overreact, but just throw the thoughts. Throw the thoughts at me.
yeah, for sure. So to answer the question directly, who had the worst loss on Sunday? It's 100% the Ravens. Again, I already mentioned with the Detroit Lions, they don't have anything to hang their heads down low on because they were playing with house money at this point where they were playing before. In fact, if it wasn't for the Dallas Cowboys choking, they probably should have only been looking forward to winning that one playoff game and probably going one and done in the next round in the divisional round because they would have been on the road at Dallas at that point. But anyways, they were handed a golden opportunity of a second home playoff game to then get to the
Yeah,
NFC Championship game. And yeah,
true.
they started off really hot. It didn't end for them well in the second half. But again, as I said earlier in the show, that was more of a testament to Brock Purdy more than the Lions suffering the choke job that people want to claim that it is, because it's really not a choke job. They were trying to continue with the identity. I know Jameer Gibbs fumble. I forgot to mention that. But dude, stuff like this happens, man. It really does.
Yeah,
It's
and
football. It's playoff football at
the
that. It's for
Niners
the
had
rights to
to
go to the Super Bowl.
they had to pull through too. The Niners had to pull through with the amount of losses they had
Oh
in the
my
conference
gosh.
back-to-back years. So this game had a lot of pressure on them, and if they would have lost this game, I mean, we would be. I mean, people would be having a field day on
Ooh.
them. We would be having a
Yeah.
really interesting conversation with the Ravens and the Niners. Like, I think
Uh-huh.
with living with a Detroit fan, partially, but what I'm saying, living with my brother being a Detroit fan, I saw it firsthand. He was really disappointed. The entire thing. I think we all were disappointed in everything. And Dan Campbell kept it real. That's the thing of we might not ever get back. It's going to be really tough. That's the thing that really sucks about it. But they did get rid of their droughts and everything. The Lions are here to stay, and they're here to try to play. But we'll talk about
Sure.
them another time. But we could shift our focus on the Ravens. Screw it. Our focus is on the Baltimore Ravens right now. So
that's exactly what I'm going to do because
go on ahead.
Fair point though. Had the 49ers were to lost this game, then my answer is the 49ers instead of the Ravens.
And it was very
because
close
the
to happening.
49ers,
that was a big thing.
It felt like that this was going to be it for them if they don't get back, that they don't win it this time. It was going to be over. They got a bunch of free agents. They got to reload the whole F them picks mentality. Even though I don't really feel like they didn't do the F them picks, but yeah, it was going to be really hard to reload or convince you that playing with Brock Purdy is going to get you back to the NFC title game or to the Super Bowl at this point. But I'm glad that they didn't lose. Now the Ravens. Again, you had the golden opportunity. This is what you wanted. You had the home, the creme de la creme. You didn't even see Buffalo. You didn't even see Joe Burrow. You didn't even see anybody in the AFC North during this playoff run. You played a rookie CJ Stroud, who I think highly of, and you think highly of, and we think that he's going to be good for future years to come. Actually, great for future years to come. We know this, but he was going to hit that rookie wall moment at some point, and it happened in the division round, especially in the second half of divisional round playoff game against the Ravens. We knew that was going to happen at some point. Okay. So if anybody was thinking that the Texans was going to go on the road and pull off a big statement,
it's a different
surgical win, you're kind of out of your mind a little bit, or you're doing a little bit too much wishful thinking. We were wishful thinkers for the time being because we wanted the Texans to beat the Ravens. But again, that's why I feel like our Bengals haterism coming out more so than our logic of football.
We keep it real over here.
We keep it real. We kept it real.
We keep it though. Yeah.
And we didn't dismay the fact that the Ravens played the best football all season long. We did not. But that doesn't always mean that when you get in this spot, the gauntlet was always going to be Patrick Mahomes. That was always going to be the measuring stick for this team. Again, for other players like Joe Burrow, who doesn't really need to measure himself against Mahomes because he's beaten him 3 out of the last 4 times. But Lamar Jackson does not have a great record against Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen combined. The reason why he's getting clamored this much by me right now, he's not really getting so much clamored by the national media. I feel like the Ravens entirely are automatically screwed out that he played bad. Yes, but the reason why I'm clamoring him a little bit is because everybody keep going with this notion that he is this dog. You mentioned about he is the dog, but he is the team elevator, and he is what makes the engine go in Baltimore. Okay, he plays the most important position. He is the most electrifying in his position. Again, he's in my top 3 in my quarterback list for a reason.
Mhm.
But you mentioned about the the rushing attack. The reason why they weren't able to run the ball as much was because they didn't get enough possessions. The Chiefs came in there understanding the game plan that this was going to be a fist fight. And the notion that the Chiefs can't play in the AFC North if they were in our division needs to be debunked immediately.
That's
They just
ridiculous.
showed it that
That's
they can
that's
go.
ridiculous.
And that's another thing too about us as Bengal fans. We need to stop with this haterade about the Chiefs and certain things. Like, dude, they had to get it out the mud this year. The reason why we're not spazzing on Josh Allen for basically losing to yet again another playoff game to the Chiefs. That's the third one now for Josh Allen. Is because Josh Allen actually played well enough to win the game. The
Yeah.
team, you can see it. The team around him kind of failed them a little bit, and they had the opportunities there. But you got to give credit to what credit's due. Patrick Mahomes was still that dude. This one for Baltimore, Lamar Jackson did not play well at all. It felt like he played like he was the little brother to Mahomes still. And yet the Ravens sold you on this identity that the Chiefs was not going to be on our level and that you got to come to Baltimore. You got to come to the bank. You got to come and play us. They was doing all of
Hey,
that.
they robbed the
You
bank.
see
I'll say that. They robbed the bank.
they
That's all I
really
got to
did.
say.
They took,
Yeah.
and then the whole thing in the pregame with Justin Tucker with the whole tee and the kicker and stuff like that while next to Mahomes while he's warming up. I saw that video and I'm looking at this like, I know people are going to want to think that, the Chiefs are being arrogant. Oh, see look how much of a crybaby. No. Why does Justin Tucker need to be right there in that spot? It's because they were trying to play mind games with the Chiefs. You in our house, you play by our rules. And I'm very happy about Travis Kelce coming in defense of his guy, throwing his stuff out of the way. That was funny. And Travis Kelce played like a man possessed. He ended up digging back
He
into his fountain of
he
youth.
looked
His
like Travis
last year,
Kelce. He looked like
he
Travis
looked
Kelce
just like
again.
Travis Kelce.
I'm
He
like,
made
oh, it's Travis Kelce. Nice.
11 targets, 11 catches, 116 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Just pure Hall of Fame stuff, man.
The last two
he was
games he's been
incredible.
fantastic. The last two games he's been really good. So I mean, he's stepped up finally. I mean, this season has been a really weird one for him with a ton of drops, but again, as a Hall of Fame player and Hall of Fame players they step up in the big moments, and he stepped up really big in these moments. So that's been a big thing for him. But yeah, like I agree. Again, we shift our focus solely on the Ravens right now.
Solely on the Ravens.
So here's the thing, all right? If Ravens fans or anybody associated with them want to go on ahead and turn this notion about the old Lamar Jackson owns Joe Burrow, all this, you're not. I don't even care. Whatever. Okay, you can do whatever you want with that, but I do want to compare this really quick, okay? Just to give reference, all right? Lamar Jackson's 2-4 in the postseason, all right, in his career. 2-4 in 6 postseason games. On the road, he's 1-1. At home, he's 1-3. You're telling me that you can't even win a home playoff game, man? And 2 of those years, you had the 1 seed, and 2 of those years, you was the quote unquote the MVP. One of them, you was the actual MVP, and the other one this year, you was quote unquote MVP, probably going to be MVP. The whole thing. So again, I get rookie year Lamar with the chart. That was a different story, but still, you 1-3 in home playoff games, which you were favored in all of them. You were favored, all right. You had the roster there. You had all that stuff. And I get playoff losses happen. That's the nature. You either win the Super Bowl or you get playoff losses. That's what happens. But the fact that, you let other people walk into your house and lose the game, you are normally the X factor in this game. Obviously, you was the X factor on the losing side of this game. Lamar's still a great player. We're talking about postseason success. He ain't up there yet. He's down. No. He's down below. Mm-hmm. But then you want to trash Joe Burrow. They want to trash Joe Burrow when Burrow's 5-2 in the postseason, won his first 3 playoff games. And people talk about, who do he play against? Well, let me tell you, he played against Derek Carr. I know Ryan Tannehill is, controversial, and same with Derek Carr, and he beat the Ravens. Be like, oh, we would have won if Lamar Jackson would have been it. Well, Lamar Jackson, was cop
No, they
out,
wouldn't
but
have. No,
they wouldn't have done that. And Lamar Jackson's a cop out. From in 2022, he was a cop out, and not to mention that in the National Football League right now, excluding Super Bowls, and I know Super Bowls are the one thing that we care about, okay? And he lost Super Bowl and lost to Mahomes in the AFC Championship. He went on ahead and beat your consensus Brady Manning guys in their home stadiums. Put up 27 points both times. So
should have been more in the Buffalo game.
Exactly, they could have ran that thing up. I didn't want to get on the Bengals track, but I kind of have to if we're talking about the Ravens and everything. So Lamar Jackson's a great quarterback. Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback and is far away, the best quarterback in the National Football League. But if you're talking about guys that he's in a class of his own, but you're talking about the class below, though, Joe Burrow's the next guy because he's actually proven that he can beat Lamar Jackson, regardless of Lamar Jackson. I mean, he can still beat Lamar Jackson, but we're talking about the Ravens a lot. But still, he can beat Patrick Mahomes. Thank you. But he can beat Patrick Mahomes regardless of where he plays at. The moment's not too big. But
before you continue,
yes.
And again, I know we're going to spill off a little bit in Burrow talk. But the further we get away from that 2021 season, and we see how magnificent Burrow was over the last 2 years, actually, it really shows you how difficult it really was for the Bengals and Joe Burrow to pull off that win. That was not a fluke. It really was. It was difficult, and you were down 21-3 in that game.
Again, people are talking about, you're celebrating your win versus the Chiefs was the best win you've ever had in franchise history. Well, to be completely honest, it probably was. Because think about it.
Actually, and I loved when Chiefs fans would try to do that, but the problem is that they try to minimize their own successes by doing that. Because actually, what we did was to knock off the two-time defending AFC champion Chiefs, who came in there back-to-back AFC conference champions. The Bengals knocked them off. Okay. That's what our biggest success has been so far, but prior to us going to eventually get a Super Bowl. But the thing is with Mahomes, man, it just feels inevitable that he's going to always be there. He's in that category, in that headspace. You're hearing all the conversations about Brady and all that stuff. I know we're going to get into that when we get into our preview talks. But again, sticking with Lamar and the Ravens, because they're the team that suffered the worst loss on Sunday. This may have been the best opportunity that the Ravens will ever get. And I'm not saying is that the Ravens are going to just be sucky and terrible and for the next years to come. Yeah. Look, they got number 8, respectfully. As long as he's still their quarterback, then they will always have a shot. And John Harbaugh is still the head coach. They're going to go through some personnel changes. They already losing one of their players, the personnel director, and he's going to become a GM with the Chargers, if I'm not mistaken, with Jim Harbaugh. They may lose Mike McDonald. They got a boatload of free agents, just like a lot of teams got a lot of free agents. But you might see some team players that are like, you know what, I want to take a better team-friendly deal to come back and try to run this thing back again with Lamar. You might see that happen. But at the end of the day, you cannot guarantee if you're a Ravens fan that you're going to be right back in this spot just because of how you got here this time around. Oh, Lamar was healthy. This is what he was able to do. Look at the rest of the AFC combined. I expect the Bengals to be better, way better, because again, the Bengals Joe Burrow was only healthy for 5 games. 5. And during those 5-game stretch, you saw what it was. You knew what it was going to be. But unfortunately, injuries kind of depleted the whole thing. And I'm not wanting to make injury excuses, but it's kind of legit at this point. You expect the Bills, even though they got a lot of decisions to make themselves, you expect the Bills to be back because the Bills was having a down year this year, similar to the Kansas City Chiefs. They had a down year this year. And they were able to regroup themselves and rattle off the wins. And let's be honest, they should have beat Kansas City. They played Kansas City at home better than the Ravens played Kansas City at home.
You also got the Texans too. Yeah.
And the Texans, the Jaguars, they're expecting to get better. Again,
Browns,
the Texans and Jaguars, the Browns,
we'll see. That's the defense, we'll talk. Yeah. But still.
And here's the thing. You never know what Pittsburgh is going to do. Because Pittsburgh ain't never.
They've had Lamar's number too. They've had Lamar's number the whole time. They've had Lamar's number.
You brought that up.
They've had his number.
I'm glad you brought that up. I'm so happy you brought that up because if I'm being real,
I don't like them, but
I can't even tell you when exactly that Lamar beat the Steelers last. Did they even play?
You know what? Let's think about that.
I got to think about that. I think 2020, 2020,
No, 20. No,
2020.
no, no, no.
He was healthy in 2020,
No,
and I
they
think he
lost
was
week 8. They lost week 8, 2020.
true, but then they also played again, and I
Is it?
believe no, no,
No, that
no,
was the
nope.
no.
You're
Hold
right.
on.
2019.
2019 week 5.
Did they
Mason
even
Rudolph got
play in
like
2022?
he
Did Lamar play the Steelers twice in 2022? Because he got
he
swept by the Ravens got swept by the Steelers in 21. Big Ben's last
yeah,
year.
21, 22. Oh, okay. No, but remember 22, he was hurt already. They played the Steelers late. He
Okay.
hasn't beaten the Steelers since 2019.
Nope.
Okay, hold on. This is live. This is a live thing. Like we just figured this out. Wow.
Yeah.
But
That
and
division
then
is no
yeah,
walk in the park for him.
no,
You know,
no,
so
not
they
one
can
bit. But to the
and
point.
you know, and they can parade all they want to about Lamar owns the Bengals. He's 8-1 in his career against the Bengals. Okay, you know, wins against Jeff Driscoll, Ryan Finley, Andy Dalton, and you know, Brandon. Okay,
Jake Browning.
we don't care about that. But
Cool.
here's the thing: I can also say, when Joe Burrow is healthy, he owns the Ravens. How do you like that for them apples? You know, we can talk about injuries I want to. Yeah, we know that these two guys played at the same field on week 2, and I didn't give the excuse of, well, Joe Burrow was hurt with his calf injury. He still was out there playing, but at the end of the day,
It's a
if I do
game.
want to use the injury excuse, he wasn't fully healthy. You know, just like
We
they
could
like to
we
do.
could play
Ravens
that
fans like
card
to
if
do that.
we want, but we're
We can't.
not going to. You know,
We're
like
not.
we're
We
not going.
acknowledge that Lamar has a
Yeah,
better record against Joe Burrow when it comes to head-to-head matchups. I'm not going to make no excuses about that. But I also know that if Lamar didn't have these business decisions that he made during his injury-riddled last 2 seasons, he would not have conveniently avoided Joe Burrow's best games against the Bengals. And when Burrow was playing at his best, because that's one thing that still sticks in my craw is week 7, 2021, when both teams were coming into that game at their best and Joe Burrow outplayed him.
yeah,
And that's how I will always view Joe Burrow when it comes to Lamar and him is that, look, you're going to lose matchups against the Ravens when they have him at quarterback. It's bound to happen. Like, what was it,
yep.
week 5 of 2022 and whatnot?
Yeah.
I
It's a
understand that.
divisional rivalry.
That
It's
was a
gonna
close.
happen.
It was a
You
close
know.
game. Whoever had the ball last, kind of thing, whatever it was.
Yep.
But it just feels like that the Ravens cannot assume, just like the Bengals can't always assume that we're easily going to make it here in the spot. You got to almost keep the mentality of, dude, I don't know. But again, you still feel hopeful. You still feel the confidence if you believe in your guy. And I think the Ravens do believe in their guy. I know this
Yeah.
for a fact. But you got the rest of the AFC feeling like they're going to get healthy, and do not expect the Chiefs to go into next year with the receiving core that they have, because they're going to look to reload.
They'll
It
find a
ain't
way.
going to be an easy
Yep.
fight, and you got a first place schedule. Not to mention, as I already said, you haven't beaten Buffalo and Kansas City in the same season yet.
Yep.
Okay, your record against those two quarterbacks head to head is only I think one win, maybe two, but I think it's only one win
It's one.
collectively
Yeah.
combined. Joe Burrow, on the other hand, is 5-1. Again, I'm tired of making this about Burrow versus the Ravens and Bengals versus the Ravens in this. But you know what? I'm gonna keep it a buck here. I've never met a fan base that was so absolutely disrespectful and so outlandish and delusional and against the Bengals like the Ravens fans have been. And quite frankly, they got what they deserved. You got cooked in the playoffs by the better team, by
Yep.
the better quarterback, and they deserved to show. They showed that they deserve to go to the Super Bowl and not you. So, with that being said, you better hope like hell that the ball bounces your way again next year, because the likelihood of that happening is not.
I'm gonna end like this. All right. So with the Super Bowl 58, we'll have previews next week throughout. All right. So we won't really touch on that a whole lot, but I will say this when it comes to the Ravens, Bengals, all of it hasn't been a matchup since November, but it seems like Twitter, people been going at it. All right. But the reason why when we speak in hypotheticals, when it comes to Burrow-led teams, Jackson-led teams, the reason that we speak hypothetical is because we've seen it happen before.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen our guy beat that dude Mahomes and get to that spot. And we saw Sunday that the Ravens guy didn't and hasn't when it's counted the most. So all I have to say is that when it comes to the Cincinnati Bengals standpoint, we can talk about that another time. But the
Sure.
Ravens, their best chance might have been this one, and they blew it. We'll see what happens going forward. The AFC is always a tough place, especially with Patrick Mahomes in it, and especially all these quarterbacks that, I mean, it's a quarterback factory right now in the American Football Conference, but that's the thing. But Super Bowl 58, man, we've gotten through a lot of Super Bowls, tell you that. Chiefs, Niners, huge game. It's a Super Bowl that everyone, consensusly didn't want to see, but it's going to be a matchup of two really good teams going at it. So I'm excited to see how that one plays out. But do you got any final thoughts before we get out of here, Justin?
No, definitely. I think that the 49ers, they were my pick the whole entire time, even though I had them matching up against the Bills and beating the Bills. But the Chiefs, they have a chance to beat Kansas City too. They really do.
Yep.
However, it's not going to be no easy task because, you're going to hear that talk all leading up throughout the next couple of weeks. Is that D word for the Kansas City Chiefs now? That dynasty.
Yep.
That's the talk that's going to be flooding the media landscape
It's
when
going to
it
be.
comes to Kansas City.
Yep.
And they're going to feel that pressure and they're going to go through some mental gymnastics of themselves to how to overcome because again, they were already the pre-anointed dynasty. But I will say this though about Kansas City. They don't need to win this Super Bowl to be considered a dynasty because again, I already threw out there the inevitability factor with Patrick Mahomes. He's inevitably going to be there in the end. He's shown it for 6 straight times.
Yep.
It's like Brady with all those appearances in the conference championship games. Mahomes is in that same stratosphere in that regards, as far as like he's always going to be here in the end when it comes to the conference championships. That you eventually got to see this dude.
Yep.
He's Bowser. I'm gonna
Yep.
steal that line from Richard Sherman. He's Bowser in the end.
Yep.
And if any quarterback that in the AFC knows that they feel like that they're going to win the Super Bowl, they know they got to get through Mahomes first.
Yep.
Again, we like to bring up Burrow and the Bengals because he was the one quarterback that can do it. But at the end of the day, he doesn't have a ring yet. So with that being said, it's Patrick Mahomes and then literally everybody else. I will absolutely 100% agree with that. And I'm not ruling the Chiefs out of winning this game. Even though I think it's like the line is the 49ers are favored by a point and a half
I
or
think
something like
two
that on
now,
the
but
betting line.
there's a lot of fluctuation over
Man,
2 weeks. So
this is a pick 'em game, bro.
it
This is a
is a
pick
pick.
'em game.
Yeah.
It's too early for me to decide now. I got to kind of crunch down some
We
tapes, but
got a
my
lot of
early vibes,
time. We got a lot of time.
yeah,
We got a
but my
lot of
early
time to do
vibes,
this.
we do, man. It's got 2 weeks to the big game kicks off, but my
Yep.
early vibes are telling me don't bet against Mahomes and the Chiefs. Just
Yeah.
don't do it. Even though I know I've rolled with Bang Bang Niner Gang, E40 track reference for those that don't know.
There you
Even
go.
though I rolled with Bang Bang
That
Niner
works.
Gang to make it at the very end this whole entire season, when you get new information, you don't want to have to keep being stubborn and keep going with your old thoughts. But at the end of the day, I still like the Niners too.
Yep.
They're more experienced this time around than the time that they met in 2019. Brock Purdy has showed that he can play better football in this time around than what Jimmy G did when he was last in this position. And quite frankly, the 49ers, they got the better roster still. They really do. Even though they haven't played like it, even though they played like, I'm not really
Yep.
so. But Brock Purdy showing what he did, having the cojones to be able to put the team on his back when every possession matters and every throw matters for him, that was really impressive to see. And I think that carries go. I think that may carry a little bit of a longer way than we might think. So while all this dynasty talk is being thrown around there about Mahomes, Andy Reid, Kansas, and the Chiefs, and Travis Kelce and Chris Jones, you cannot think for 1 second that the 49ers ain't going to come with guns blazing because they will. They
Yeah.
absolutely will. And this is not
Yep.
they just can't, what they just don't need to make the mistake of doing is looking at this Kansas City Chiefs team like this, the explosive juggernaut that they played back then in the Super Bowl or the last few years that we've always known. The Chiefs are still not like that. But whatever that they're making up on offense, they've got it on defense now. So it's going to be a really good game, man. I'm actually excited for this. Even though at first I was like, "Oh man, I don't want to see the Chiefs in there,"
Yeah, but hey, we
but
got a
I'm
good
over
man.
that, man.
Yeah,
I'm over that, man. I'm over
yep.
it. I'm glad. I respect the Kansas City, man. You guys got it out of the mud this year. You
Yep.
really did. And
It's
you had a lot of lucky calls go your way
yeah, that's true.
during the
But
playoff stretch.
yeah,
But look at that quick playoff run. Miami, they didn't want to play in the cold. They didn't want to play them. They was able to wipe the floor with them. Buffalo choked the opportunity with the wide right, and when the opportunity was goldenly handed to them after the Kadarius Toney fumble, and then Baltimore outbullied themselves.
Yep.
That's not the Chiefs' fault. They stuck to their game plan, did what they had to do. They matched energies the way to how they went against each team. It kind of almost reminds you of what the Bengals did when Burrow went through the 21 and 22 seasons. You tailored your game plan to each opponent that you played.
Yep.
That's how I felt like the Chiefs approached this playoff run. Hey, whoever we get, let the Dolphins freeze themselves out to Cancun. Let the Bills pretend like, come in with this high shot energy. They was able to match score for score. And then Baltimore, they want to come with this physical, big bully brow toughness. Okay, well, we're going to show them that we're going to fight back, and we're going to out physically too. We're going to push you around too.
Yep.
And that was beautiful to watch too, man. So that's, again, my early vibes are telling me don't bet against Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes.
Yep.
But I also still like the 49ers to win.
It's a tough one, man. But we got a lot of time to dice things up and see which way the ball bounces. So excited to do that. Have some special guests coming on this week to talk. Maybe we'll get some big guys in the spot. So we'll see. But for us, Justin Lacey, Chase Johns, we'll see you guys next time with